Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers in search of creative teaching strategies. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm glad to welcome you to episode 38, focusing in on standalone projects and units you can put in whenever and wherever you need them. If you're building a new course, revamping an old one, or now and then run into a few spare days you just don't know quite what to do with, this episode is for you. It's easy to get caught up in what has to be covered in our classrooms. The standards, the number of vocabulary words, the types of writing. But often there is wiggle room. This year I've read several of John Spencer's books about empowering student learning, and that fun little phrase wiggle room is one of my favorite takeaways from his work. Not only can you cover a lot of standards, types of writing, and vocabulary through creative units, but there's often some space in between the more formal required elements of your curriculum. This show will give you 10 creative options for your wiggle room, the space that opens up between novels and short stories, poems, and plays. Okay, so we're going to start today with one of my favorite projects, and you can tuck this in anywhere you want with any age of students. It's the This I Believe essay from National Public Radio. So NPR used to have this amazing segment called This I Believe. In this segment, they would invite people from all over the world to send in a short essay about one of their core beliefs. And the belief could be anything. It usually didn't have much to do with religion. It could be something like, I believe in the pizza delivery guy, or I believe in Montessori education. These essays were so powerful that they have created a full curriculum guide for teachers to help students write This I Believe essays. And it's an amazing curriculum guide. It's easy to follow. There are tons of activities. And it really does help students with their writing. As they learn how to write specific, detailed This I Believe essays, they're going to make some strides in other types of writing too. They're going to figure out how to be more descriptive, how to include more interesting details, how to support that main point of their belief, how to share anecdotes and stories that will give a sense of why they believe in this core belief that makes it a lot more interesting for readers and listeners. So I did this unit with my seniors in Bulgaria. It was so much fun. We spent, I can't remember, 1 or 2 weeks working on the essays, and then we decided to culminate the unit with a live radio show. So we went down to this sort of big entryway area of our building, and I set up a microphone on the stage and a bunch of chairs around, and we made programs, and the students took turns coming up one at a time, and they actually read their essays out loud in the microphone. We called it a live radio show. It was super fun. People filtering through the building just stopped in to listen and applaud after each essay. And then the final thing we did was to send in the essays. Anybody who wanted to could send them in to NPR and submit them. Now, NPR doesn't air these pieces anymore on the radio, but they will sometimes publish them to their website. And 2 of my students had theirs published on the National Public Radio website, which was obviously a nice feeling for them. So if you're interested in the This I Believe curriculum, you can just search it online, or you can check out the link I'll put in my show notes. It's really fabulous. It's all set up for you. So this is a great option if you have 1 or 2 weeks. I think you could make this take as little time or as much time as you want, anywhere between 3 or 4 days and 7 or 8 or even 9 days. Okay, the second idea I'm going to share with you today is to do a Genius Hour project. Now, I did a show a few weeks back about Genius Hour that you can check out. But basically, Genius Hour is a way of giving students some time in class to work on a passion project. And you may be thinking, based on Genius Hours that you've heard of, that Genius Hour really has to be something you do for the entire year or for 6 weeks. But it really doesn't. Genius Hour can fit into whatever block of time you have. So if you have 3 days available, give students 3 days to work on something that they're really interested in and passionate about and create something. It will be something smaller scale. If you have 2 weeks, you can get a lot done in 2 weeks. Imagine how much you could get done if you had 2 weeks with an hour and a half every day to work on something that you've just been dying to do, maybe for years. And students are going to be so excited to have a chance to dive into something they really care about, whether it's starting to learn a new language or writing and performing a song. Anything that they're interested in, you can give them a chance with a Genius Hour project. Okay, the third idea would be to give a try to Angela Stockman's amazing idea of the English makerspace. You've probably heard me talk before, if you're a regular listener, about her book, Make Writing, which I love. And the concept behind Make Writing, or at least one of the key concepts, is that students can get over some of their writer's block if they create something before they begin to write about it. So for example, maybe you want to have students write a short story, but no one really has any idea where to begin. Collaborate with an art teacher, create a little makerspace in your room with art materials, and let the students sketch, draw, paint, sculpt, even build with Legos. Use some kind of medium to create a character. So they work on the character, they kind of start to imagine details about that character, imagine his or her life. And then once they have this character right in front of them that feels alive, you invite them to write a story about it. Okay, next up, you could try a design thinking project with your students. Design thinking is all the rage these days, but it's kind of hard to nail down exactly what it is. With design thinking, students work to create something, some product, some final thing that they can show. But first, they have the chance to dive deep into the issue or the problem they want to address and really get inside the heads of the people they want to help. So if you were to take some time to do a design thinking project, you could have your students try to create some product, some event, something that would improve your school or community maybe. And you give them a lot of the reins of their own learning. So you're going to have them brainstorm what are the issues that need fixing or that could use some help. Talk to people who are involved in those issues, and then really come up with a plan for what could make a difference before they ever launch into building, creating, writing, designing. One of my favorite authorities on design thinking is John Spencer, and I'm going to link a wonderful post on getting going on design thinking in the show notes for today if you want to dive into this one. All right, next up, free choice reading. This is one of my favorite ways to fill a hole. I mean, it's really one of my favorite ways to teach English. So whether you're using it for a 2-week hole or you want to build it into your curriculum throughout the year in a few different places, I think it's really wonderful when you give students the chance to choose a book that they love and read it and produce something about it, whatever that is. So I first began doing free choice reading, and I did it as an isolated unit with my 10th graders when I was teaching in Bulgaria. So I gave them 2 weeks in May at the end of the year for just a free choice reading unit. I went to the library, I picked out a ton of my very favorite books from my life, and I designed a little display at the back of the room. And when they came in, they saw all the books, and I gave book talks on a bunch of them, and I just sort of tried to stoke their enthusiasm. Then I let everyone either pick one of my books or go to the library and find one of their own, read it, and then present a book project on it. We had a lunchtime reading festival to culminate the unit. So we invited the 9th graders at the school, some other teachers, and we just had a lot of fun. We played music, we brought in food, we looked at everybody's projects, and it was really a joy. This is such an easy way to fill up some time in your curriculum. And it's such a helpful one because you get to know your students better when you see what they really enjoy reading and you connect with them. And so in that way, it would be a great thing to do sooner in the year, like in September or October, because as you get to know your students' reading preferences, that can really be helpful in connecting with them and helping influence their reading choices throughout the year. But whenever you do it, it's a great thing to do. Next up, Poetry Slam. I really cannot say enough about the power of Poetry Slam to engage your students. I usually do my Poetry Slam units in 1 week. It's intense, it's fast, we get super into it, and then it's over. So what I basically do is I introduce Poetry Slam on a Monday. I show them some clips. We do some mock judging. We talk about what we like about the clips, what makes them unique and powerful. And then we start doing some writing workshops. We divide into committees and plan out our slam. So I usually have a judging committee that figures out the judges. I have an ambiance committee that figures out where our location is going to be, what the food is going to be, if there's going to be music, are we going to have microphones, all that kind of thing. And then I have a program committee that also takes pictures during the slam and submits them like to the school newspaper or any news media that they might want to share their poetry slam with. So like I said, you can do this really quickly. You could also make it a long unit. You could intersperse a lot of canonical poetry and poetry discussions. You could make it a couple weeks, even 3 weeks. But for me, it's Monday to Friday. Friday, we have the slam, and it's always so much fun. I have done a whole episode on Poetry Slam that you can check out. I'll link it in the show notes, and I've also done a blog post. So if you want to go deep, check out the show notes. Next up, TED Talks. Who doesn't love a good TED Talk? One of my own personal favorites is called Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator. It's a hilarious TED Talk. It's a great way to launch a discussion with students about how they schedule their lives, how they deal with important moments and important assignments. I convinced my school to play it at an assembly this year, and it was a big hit. This is a really great TED Talk to share with students. I'll link a few of my other favorites in the show notes today. But spending a few days watching, discussing, responding to TED Talks in writing and in discussion is a wonderful way to fill a hole in your curriculum. It brings in modern voices, important issues for today. You could also have students work on TED-style talks, or you could have them organize a TEDx event in the community. Some of our students at my school in California, where I used to work, organized a TEDx in the theater at the school, and it was really powerful, I think, for them to see that they could organize something so big and something so important that so many people came to. And so that would also be really neat, whether it's a TEDx event just with teachers and parents and people within the community, or if it's a TEDx that actually reaches out to, semi-famous people, authors, people that students have connections with. That would be really cool too. Next up, a one-act play festival. I did this for the first time a few years ago with my seniors, and especially if your curriculum includes any drama at all, if you're reading even one play, then your students are prepped to have a one-act festival of their own. So you invite them to write a script. They've seen what a play looks like probably multiple times. They've probably read them before they got to your class too. So they're going to write a script in groups is how I usually do it, and then rehearse those plays for a few days. And you can make it as big of a deal or as small of a deal as you want. You can do lessons on blocking and sets and everything like that. You can encourage them to do costumes and have music and have props, or you can keep it very minimalist. For me, I kind of went in between. We worked on this for about a week. They wrote the scripts, they rehearsed. I encouraged them to have some costumes, some props, and to choose a location somewhere in the building where we were. So we weren't going to make this a massive production, but it was fun, and it was serious enough that they took it seriously. So at the end, they turn in their scripts, they perform for everybody else in the class. And I really feel like that experience of writing scenes and acting them out really kicks up their understanding of theater quite a bit. Next, you could have students experiment with some podcasting. Obviously, I'm biased since I have a podcast, but I think that podcasts are really growing in popularity, and the stats do back me up. Around the world, people of all ages are looking for something that they can listen to while they're doing the sort of mundane tasks of life, whether that's working out or commuting, cleaning the house. It's really nice to have a podcast in your ears, and introducing students to that concept while they're young is great because that's going to give them the chance to be learning while they're doing boring things for the rest of their life. So I think teaching them about podcasts, playing some good podcasts, giving them a chance to write and create a podcast is a really cool experience for them to have in high school. I once did a set of podcasts with my students where we did something kind of like This American Life. So they needed to tie together some interviews, some research, some stories, along with little introductions and little outros that they wrote, all kind of tied together with one thematic thesis. I don't know if you've ever heard the show This American Life. It's one of my favorites, but we copied that style very specifically, and you could do that too, or you could model it after another podcast that you like, that you want to share with your students. And what I want to say especially is that when I had them do that, I knew absolutely nothing about podcasting. I had never recorded a single sound bite. I had never mixed together music or edited in GarageBand. And it really didn't matter. I asked our tech coordinator at the school to give my students a quick mini lesson, and that's really all that was needed. They were so much more tech savvy than I was at that point, and it was very easy for me to say when they had a little snag, I would say, well, search that in YouTube, look for a tutorial that'll help you with blending sound effects with vocal effects or whatever they needed. And they always did find an answer on the internet, just as I do now, and just as almost everybody does for their issues. And it's a good chance to teach them that they can be self-sufficient in that way. Of course, if you want to learn a lot about podcasting and go deep with them into a program like GarageBand, that would be great too. And I'm going to link in the show notes an amazing video from somebody named Pat Flynn, who walks you step by step through how to create an episode template in GarageBand. And so if you want to use that with them, you can kick off their tech if you want to, but don't let that stop you. If you're not big on tech, that doesn't mean you can't do podcasting. All right, finally, I want to recommend a great option for some space you have in your curriculum is to let your students start a blog. If you haven't tried this yet, get ready for a lot of fun. I ran a whole student blogging elective one year, and I don't know who enjoyed it more, me or the students. When you give them that chance to have their own platform and share in their own style to the world, you're really empowering them. You're teaching them how to write for other people, but also how to dig deep and explore what they really care about. And they find out by creating a blog that they can actually have an impact on the world. You can have them put in one of those little widgets that shows a map of where people are reading their blog, and it is so much fun to watch them as the little dots pop up around the world, and they think, wow, somebody actually cares what my opinions on music are, or somebody likes the fashion photography that I'm putting up here and the looks that I'm writing about, or somebody agrees with my opinion on the New York Yankees or whatever. They have this chance to connect their passion to the world, and it inspires and it empowers their reading, their photography, their writing, their research. They start getting interested in how to create photography collages and how to embed videos, how to put in sound clips. It's just wonderful. And it's all part of a skill set that is so relevant for modern career folks. And so I think this is an important thing to consider as an English teacher. We want them to have these skills. If you want to be a writer these days, you better also be able to podcast or also have a little flair for photography or be a video creator. These are really important skills within our discipline today. And so I think it's wonderful when we help our students get started with them. So I hope one of these options appeals to you. A hole in the curriculum can really just be a fun opportunity for creativity as long as you've got a little list of ideas. So here are some ideas to get you started, and I hope you like them. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to check out the show notes for today's episode, just head to www.nowsparkcreativity.com and click on the podcast tab at the top of the page. There you'll find the many links I've mentioned, as well as a write-up of the show to help you remember these 10 ideas whenever you need them. While you're there, take a second to subscribe to my email community and pick up my popular set of 4 free one-pager templates with complete instructions. Once you're on my email list, I'll share fun, creative teaching ideas with you every Friday to help inspire you in your wonderful work. The Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more podcast recommendations, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.